I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along and let somebody know that the conversation is going down right now. Pleased to have a topic of local politics. Minneapolis and St. Paul both have municipal elections in the early November, and we want to focus on that for the next several days to help you have good information to make your decision at the poll. Most of all, we want you to take your responsibility and your opportunity seriously, to show up, show out. The way you show out is to cast your ballot. We had intended to have candidates for 8th Ward. We invited the incumbent 8th Ward alder person, Andrea Jenkins. We expected her to be here. We do have one of the contestants for that seat, Terry White. Terry White is here, and we are expecting to have a wonderful conversation with Terry White about why he wants to serve you in the 8th Ward of Minneapolis. Before we start that, I want to once again invite you all to support this program, this show, The Conversation with Al McFarlane. The way you do that is by going to YouTube, Insight News MN, and becoming a subscriber, share, and like. We want to build our audience to 1,000 subscribers. We're probably halfway there right now, but I'm asking you, as I do every day, to take a minute and like or share or subscribe and help us get to that number. Also tell your friends. If you have ideas, suggestions, people that you think we should be talking to, we'd love to hear from you. And you can always connect with us at the Insight News website. And there are other ways to reach us as well. So with that, let us begin. And I want to welcome Terry White, who's a Minneapolis 8th Ward City Council candidate. Terry says he believes in a better way for Minneapolis, and that's why he's running to be the next 8th Ward council member. He's been a homeowner in the Field neighborhood for over 16 years. He's got a couple of teenage boys and a wife who's a psychotherapist with an office near Uptown. He says his in-laws live in Minneapolis and his wife's parents are in their 90s. So there's a generational consideration that I think he feels is important. His background includes 20 years working in healthcare regulatory services. He says he knows what it means to be held accountable in stressful and ambiguous situations. He's got experience and training in management, in negotiations, cost-benefit analysis, budgeting, and compliance. And he says he's proven himself capable of navigating complex organizations and finding common ground with individuals when their priorities may differ. He calls himself a progressive Democrat and says he's committed to creating a city that reflects our best values, that's future focused, and that runs efficiently. Terry White, good afternoon. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. How you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me on.
Well, let's start with what made you decide to run, and I'll come back to the personal questions again. You know, as I told you before we started, this is just a conversation between two guys and whoever else is listening. So feel free and feel relaxed, and you can help move the direction of the conversation. I want to make sure that you say what you want to say and say it as clearly as you can and as expansively as you need to, so people know who you are and what you stand for. So.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity. As I mentioned, I think a lot of people have only had the opportunity to hear me in different forums, and a lot of times you're really on the spot and have a very short amount of time to speak. So I appreciate being able to have a longer conversation. I think that there's several reasons that made me want to run, and I did get in a little bit late after the DFL convention, but it's sort of ironic, I guess, in that because of COVID, I started working from home, and then I decided that I wanted to work in a shared office space, and so when I started doing that on a daily basis, I was going through the homeless encampments. And my wife goes through the homeless encampments every day. And we found ourselves day after day kind of talking about this and just the suffering that we were seeing and kind of the impact that it was having, not only on us and how we felt, but our concern for the people in those encampments, and how it might be damaging the city's ability to rebound from COVID. And um, so when I started looking at what the city was doing about homelessness in a much deeper, meaningful way, I really found that the mayor and the city council weren't doing anything. I mean, the sweeps are, I guess, a type of action, but it's not a sustainable action. It's not helping the people that are in the encampments, and it's not helping the people that live by the encampments. And so it was just really disturbing to see that, and that was very motivational to run for city council. Oh, I think you might have gone on mute there.
I did. That's a great topic to begin with, this question of homelessness. And let me just have you sit in that for a minute and describe, why homelessness exists to the level that it does in our city. And, you mentioned that the sweeps is one strategy, but you don't see it as a solution. And talk about the solutions you'd like to bring and propose to the city to address the question of homelessness. But why is homelessness such an emerging issue at this point in time in our community?
Well, affordable housing certainly plays a big part in that. The demand for affordable housing is much greater than the supply. It's related to the fact that 17% of the city lives in poverty. And I think you really have to kind of look at it holistically. And I think there's plenty of families out there that are, one emergency medical bill or other incidents that could really push them over the line and lead to homelessness. Another big change is that I think we're dealing with the legacy of the Oxycontin crisis, the opioid crisis that has kind of morphed into this much more powerful synthetic opioid, the fentanyl. And so there's definitely a lot of drug addiction that requires some intense services. But the stories of why an individual has ended up homelessness, I think, vary with every individual as to how they've gotten there. I mean, whether they're fleeing domestic abuse or, like I said, they just can't meet their mortgage or rent for one reason or another, and they've been evicted. So I think all of those factors are contributing to what's going on.
Do you have a sense of differentiating between what we call homelessness a generation ago? Maybe it was before your generation, but there was
I'm so young.
a community of people that chose to live outdoors and to live on the road and live down by the flats or by the railroad tracks, and they were itinerant or could have been relatively nomadic, semi-permanent in places that they enjoyed being. But that was a relatively small number, and it was kind of a culture that the general population acknowledged but didn't have fear of. You've mentioned the crises of opioid and drug addiction and the other financial crises that drive people out of stable housing, not able to pay rent, et cetera. And so is the public looking at this problem through antiquated lenses, what I described as the romantic, outsider of the generation ago? Does that apply to the people who are homeless or unhoused at the moment, or is something more sinister and more deeply fall around right now? What's the difference, if there is one?
Well, I think there is a difference. I wouldn't necessarily say sinister, unless you kind of talk about the Sackler family and how they got so many people addicted to drugs that they marketed as not being addictive or harmful, and clearly they were. But I think of it as it's a healthcare crisis on a certain level because there is a lot of drug addiction. I think one of the things that's different, that's obvious to a lot of people, is that there are people nodding off on street corners, and for me, that was one of the things that really hit home. Is I'm at a stoplight and someone is trying to get change, which that's happened for years, but like nodding off from drugs in the middle of trying to get change. And so you can really see that this drug addiction is crept into this population in a way that I think is relatively new, like in the last several years. And that's why, like, my solution, which is based on what other cities like Denver have done, is setting up sort of micro communities of regulated encampment areas with tiny homes, pallet homes, bathrooms, lockers, the sort of things that people need to have at least the modicum of stability. And it would also allow for the type of wraparound services that people need in order to start, getting a foothold in society and being able to work on their addiction or work on, what other obstacles they might be facing to, finding a stable home. So what I'm proposing, and this is sort of a challenge to not only the mayor, but Andrea Jenkins, I'm proposing that we dedicate $30 million of the budget for this. And, that may seem like a lot, but it's less than 2% of the mayor's $1.8 billion budget. And when I look at how the city is spending money, like they spent $21 million redoing Bryant Avenue, to me, that's showing that their priorities are out of whack. I find it very upsetting to spend that sort of money on an avenue when there's people sleeping on the streets that could be put in a better situation to help them move on with their lives. So, and I think that just shows a real lack of leadership in the council by the mayor. I think in his latest budget, he's put in $1 million for homelessness. Well, that doesn't even scratch the surface. It has to be more than that. And there's so many hidden costs to what's happening with homelessness right now. Like the city is spending $14 million on overtime for police. Part of that overtime is for the sweeps, right? So we're paying for it there. We pay for it when new businesses don't come into the area because, people are driven away by encampments, or they don't feel safe walking by them with money in their billfold to spend at a local business. So there's a lot of hidden costs, and that doesn't even begin to speak about the lives that are being ruined. I mean, when I first announced that I was running and that my number one priority was homelessness, people would contact me and say, I'm so happy that you're in this race and that you're talking about this, because so many of the other candidates really just kind of give it lip service. And I'm the only one who's been very clear, putting budget dollars and having a real plan to address the issue. Because my big concern, and people talk about affordable housing as the solution, well, that's years down the road. And right now, home mortgages are at almost 8%. So we're not turning around this affordable housing situation in the next 2 years or 3 years. And my big concern is that we have 40 encampments in the city right now. Next year, it's going to be 50 or 60. And instead of spending $30 million now, we're going to be spending $50 million 2 years from now.
It's a big jump. So, so $30 million this year, or in the current budget, would do what? What's the impact you'd be looking to deliver with that kind of investment from the city? That's question number one. Talk specifically about homelessness in Ward 8. What's the impact, the presence in your ward?
Well, like I said, the money would really be spent on funding services to help people treat their drug addiction, treat mental illness that they may not be getting services for right now. It would be for renting hotel rooms if needed. It would be for establishing, like I said, these micro communities with tiny homes, bringing those in, all the kind of fundamental services that people need to survive, toilets, lockers, things of that nature. In particular in Ward 8, as I mentioned, like the 31st Street area, sort of up by Kmart, there was a lot of speculation that when they went and did the sweep just recently in the past week, the next night, the Kmart was set on fire. Mm-hmm. Can't prove that there was a link. They're still investigating what caused the fire, but
what is the speculation? What's the rumor mill saying?
Well, someone angry over the sweep probably is what I would say. And although I was at the Lindale Neighborhood Association meeting probably 3 or 4 nights before, and they had the police report. The police were there reporting on crime in the neighborhood, and they had said like someone had recently broken into that Kmart to steal the copper, right? So it was left. The Kmart has been left long enough that it's become a target, right? Mm-hmm. So people have broken in, stolen the copper. They had to shut down the electricity, put in new monitoring, and so it could just be vandals in there trying to steal something, and so mm-hmm. It caught on fire, or it could have been some type of protest. They don't know.
You proposed a progressive property tax. Explain that. How would it work?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So, a big election issue this year is the 3%, the idea of a 3% rent control cap. I do not support that, but I do think that this city has kind of let developers run rampant with high-end development in the city. So the philosophy has really been, we need more housing, which I agree with. The vacancy rate for rentals is like 4.1%, which landlords love, right? Because it allows them to charge more money. But the median rent has gone up 20% in the last year. So what that is telling me is that, yes, we've had some construction lately, but it's really focused on that high-end rental market. Mm-hmm. And so my idea is for a luxury tax, and it would work that, let's say a 1-bedroom apartment, median rent is $1,472. So if you're going to charge $1,900, that amount above the median would have a special luxury tax on it. And then that money would go into funding programs to address homelessness, to address affordable housing. Because, another concern that I have with the council is it's great to talk about all these things, but there has to be a funding stream. There has to be a real plan in place to keep these programs going. A good example is that I support the guaranteed basic income. Well, the city has a pilot going on right now with 400 families, but that's being funded by federal dollars that came out of COVID relief. That money is going to go away. So the city needs to be creative in its solutions. We're not getting that right now from the city council or the mayor. How are we going to fund that? I think it's a great program. I want to see it be successful. I think there's a lot of families that could benefit from having more of a robust social safety net that can provide. But it's up to the city council to look at the budget, to negotiate where we can find spending, come up with new programs. And the reason that I support the luxury tax is, one, we have a lot of out-of-town corporate landlords that are really benefiting, taking money out of the city back to Utah or back to Washington, and it's not helping the city really. So this is a way to I think kind of use what's happening to benefit the people in the community by doing a luxury tax. And it's an idea that I'm willing to discuss. I want to put these ideas out there so that people are considering innovative ways to help the community.
We're going to be joined by City Council President and the incumbent Andrea Jenkins in a few minutes. I have one more question for you, Terry White, and thank you so much for being here. And thank you for taking the time to explore these issues that are critical. Let me ask you to talk about public safety. Talk about the 3rd Precinct and George Floyd Square. What are your feelings, your thoughts, observations? What must we do? What will you do as you seek to serve as a leader in Ward 8?
Yeah, well, I think it's, George Floyd Square, just like the 3rd Precinct, is one of these things that we need leadership on. And we've let these things go too long. I think the community wants a plan. And Andrea and the current council have failed to be able to make a decision. They need to come up with ideas and put them forward and work for them and get them done. And that's not happening right now. What I'd like to see at George Floyd Square, what I proposed, is a center, the George Floyd Center for Peace and Justice. And I think it would have a museum to all the artwork so that people from around the world can come and view the artwork, hear what people are saying learn about the impact that event had. And then I also think it could have several stories. What I would like to have is some community rooms where people in the community could come and talk about issues. And I would like to have a satellite office there for Ward 8 so that community members know exactly where to find me so that they can come and engage with me and tell me about what are their biggest concerns in the neighborhood. So. And I think by moving my office there, it keeps people in the neighborhood, will help revitalize and bring back some of the businesses that have gone away since the uprising. And so, yeah.
You submitted an inspirational quote with your bio. Why don't you share that inspirational quote, and that'll be the closeout for this interview.
I don't have it memorized. I would have to.
Well, let me read it, and you can respond to it. You
Okay.
wrote, "It may take something compelling to wake us up, to turn us away from that half-sleep state and away from the easy answers society offers us about how best to live. Consume more, compete more, move faster, get ahead of change." That's the quote that you submitted. And what was in your mind when you sent that out?
Well, I try and meditate every day, 6:30 in the morning. Sharon Salzberg, who I took that from, is someone that I read and get guidance from. And there's there's a lot that the city can do. I think the city can help the people that are being impacted by larger world events, economic systems. But, there's a lot of work that we have to do, I think, internally to keep our compass focused. And that really speaks to me. I mean, it's so easy to get distracted in our society by all the glittery objects. But for me to really bring about change in our lives and have a positive impact on those around us, it takes sort of constant vigilance to realize we're all interconnected, and to believe that and act like that, so that you understand that your actions are going to have impact on not only your immediate family and friends, but maybe people that you don't see. So
Terry White, thank you so much.
thank
Good
you
luck.
for having me.
Good luck. We'll see you. I'm
Okay.
Al McFarlane. This is the Conversation with Al McFarlane. We're going to be joined by City Council President, the incumbent in 8th Ward, Andrea Jenkins, in just a moment after this message. Are you or someone you know recovering financially from the COVID-19 pandemic, the lockdown, or any other reason? If so, help is available. Findhelp.org is a site to find a wide range of resources, including food, medical care, and more. The best part is based on your zip code. Visit findhelp.org, enter your zip code and the service you need. You'll get a map directing you to the organizations that can help you. Help is waiting at findhelp.org. If you need help starting anew, findhelp.org is the site for you. I'm Al McFarlane. This is the Conversation with Al McFarlane. Continue discussing local politics with candidates in the 8th Ward. So now we have the pleasure of talking with Andrea Jenkins. She's presently the president of the Minneapolis City Council. She represents 8th Ward. She's the incumbent, 8th Ward in South Minneapolis. She grew up in Chicago, graduated from Lindblom Technical High School in 1979. Andrea Jenkins is the first Black transgender woman to be elected to public office in the United States. She was first elected to the council in 2017 with 73% of the vote. Before being elected, she worked for 12 years as a policy aide to 2 members of the Minneapolis City Council, and subsequently served as the oral historian for the Transgender Oral History Project at University of Minnesota Libraries. That project documenting the lived experiences of transgender and gender non-conforming people in the upper Midwest and the United States. Andrea Jenkins is a poet and artist, as well as a public official. She's the author of a poetry collection called The Tea Is Not Silent, New and Selected Poems from Purple Lioness Press, that in 2015, and a contributor to the acclaimed anthologies Queer Voices, Poetry, Prose, and Pride, that published by Minnesota Historical Society Press in 2019. Also, A Good Time for the Truth, Race in Minnesota, also at Minnesota Historical Society Press 2016, and Blues Vision, African American Writing from Minnesota Historical Press 2015. Jenkins holds a bachelor's degree in human services, a master's degree in community economic development, and a master of fine arts and creative writing. She's a recipient of many awards, including the Bush Foundation Fellowship. Madam President, welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, Al. The most proudest thing that you mentioned is I graduated from Lindblom High School. We got our 45-year anniversary coming up next year, and I'm still in touch with so many of my classmates. And I credit Lindblom with, helping me change direction in life. Growing up in Chicago, it was, I faced many of the challenges that we hear about in in Black communities, many of the pathologies. My father was in penitentiary when, during my childhood. We had drug and alcohol addiction in our family. Like I said, all of the sort of, pejorative things that we think about growing up in a city, we face. But going to Lindblom, my classmates really, you know, like encouraged me, or I would say influenced me
Was
to go
Lindblom
to college.
was it a black school or a white school?
It was a all black school. All of my teachers were from historically Black colleges in the South. And
Mhm.
even though we were, poor, they were like, no, you are going to succeed. I was literally just on um, social media this morning talking about how we used to go to the library,
Mhm.
and how just amazing our teachers were to push us in those directions. So no, I went to a predominantly Black high school with mostly Black teachers, and mostly from, like I said, HBCUs. And they refuse to let us fail. And I think that's the challenge with our Minneapolis public schools, even though we know that the city council doesn't have a lot to do with the schools. However, you know, the teachers, they don't have um, confidence in our students. They don't believe that these students can succeed. Um, they talk about poverty and such as being the problem. I was poor. Um, Black people have been poor since we came to this country, and we graduated from Harvard, Yale. So that can't be the excuse. But at any rate, thank you for mentioning Lynn Bloom amongst all the other things that you mentioned in that introduction. And it's great to be here with you today.
Well, it's great to hear you reflect on that because the question of upbringing is important. And I'm glad you took the time to reflect on how important that experience was to you. And I think you
Mm-hmm.
talked about the question of identity in part, what forms identity and how identity plays a role, whether you are uh, uh, perceived as capable or not. And what I heard you just say is that part of the challenge for Black kids or kids of color in our public schools is whether or not the teaching uh, component truly believes in them.
Right. I
Yeah.
think that's critical. And I'm not trying to disparage our teachers. I think teachers are amazing, but a lot of our young white teachers, and that's the majority of teachers in our public schools, they just don't have um, the confidence and belief in our young people.
As you pursue reelection, what are the principal things you're sharing with the voters, encouraging, inviting them to support your campaign and your
Mhm.
reelection to city council? Uh,
Well, one of the main things that I'm really trying to say, Al, is experience matters. Um, you know, Relationships matter. I have been, as you stated, in City Hall for a while. I worked for two different city council members. I thought they were really great. In fact, they both were the vice president of the council. So, I got an opportunity to sit in on leadership meetings, leadership conversations, and I learned from them. And, both of them really, really strive to be the president of the council. But I was in my first term elected vice president, and then in my second term, I was elected president. And I think that was about experience. That was about uh, relationships. Al, I have always been a bridge builder. We have been working together in this community for a long time. And, I'm about trying to bring people together, trying to build coalitions, trying to make sure that we are including everybody in the progress of this city. And that has been reflected by people's leadership. I mean, people's recognition of my leadership. As you stated, I was elected with 73% of the vote in my first term. My second term, I was elected with almost 84% of the vote. And so, a lot of times people's support goes down.
Mhm.
And one of the things that, we had, my support went up, and that was after COVID, after the uprisings, after the turmoil that we have lived through in Minneapolis, the destruction of Lake Street, the destruction of Broadway, uh, Cedar Riverside, people were really distrustful of city government, city um, police, as they should be. But instead of my support going down, my support went up. And, you know, so that's what distinguishes me from my opponents is um, my commitment to this community. I've been working on 38th in Chicago long before George Floyd was murdered. In fact, I have a plan called the 38th Street Plan that talks about building a center for racial healing before, because guess what, Al? Racism existed before George Floyd was murdered.
That's right.
I knew that. You knew that. I'm not sure if Mr. White really knew and appreciated that, but I had a plan in 2018 with community support to build a center for racial healing at 38th in Chicago. We didn't know George Floyd was going to get murdered at that intersection, but we knew we needed to build a center for racial healing. And that work is continuing. And you don't have to take my word for it, Al. You can go look it up. 38th and 38th Street Thrive. It's on the website, and it has as its center point a Center for Racial Healing.
Well, let's talk about racial healing in South Minneapolis and the third precinct in particular. What do
Mhm.
you see as the state of things in terms of police community relations, in terms of how the community is looking at uh, law enforcement and justice and alternative strategies um, for public safety? What are your
Sure.
thoughts?
Yeah, no, and that's a big question. I'll just start out with the third precinct, and it is a matter of healing that is really um, at the center of that debate. We've been talking about it for the past 3 years. It's really been a challenge to get some progress and some movement. I had come up with a alternative that I thought would give us some time, which was to place the third precinct co-located with the first precinct that's going to be moving into Century Plaza. And initially, all my colleagues said, "Wow, that's a great idea. Let's do it." And then they declined. Right? They voted it down, and
Hmm.
so we're kind of back to square one. The mayor proposed the 2600 Minnehaha site as a middle ground. I think it could be a possibility. But we got to build community trust. So we just brought in former Chief Justice, we can say that now, Todrick Barnett,
Hmm.
who has been a trusted leader in our judicial system, but also, he worked as a public defender, a prosecutor, and then he became Chief Justice. And so I think, he's going to bring his um, ideas around public safety to bear on this new department that we have created, the Department of Public Safety. So we're combining all of our public safety functions together to create a transformative continuum of public safety. So the new department includes MPD, it includes MFD, the fire department, it includes our emergency management systems, 911, as well as the Office for Neighborhood Safety. And that encompasses alternatives to police with guns. So there we have our behavioral crisis response team, which they respond to mental health crises. And that program is going super well, and we will continue to fund it into perpetuity. So don't believe these people that are saying, oh, we don't know what the city is going to do about this behavioral crisis team. I can tell you, Al, it's going to continue. We also have our violence interrupters, and we just funded them. Groups like A Mother's Love, groups like We Push for Peace, and so many other community-based groups that are out here helping to lower the crime rate, lower the temperature around, some of the violence that we see happening within our communities. In fact, I'm just been on a panel with Sheriff Witt, Attorney General Keith Ellison, County Commissioner Angela Conley, Mayor Fry, and Council Member Emily Koski. We're at the South Minneapolis Senior Fair, and the Attorney General, who is a North Sider, right, was talking about the intersection of Broadway and Lindell, and how we've been able to transform that intersection from last year there were murders, drug dealing, open air drug dealing, gang violence, etc. That has been dramatically reduced using group violence interrupters to sort of manage that place and bring it to a sense of calm and sense of community. So these things are working. We still got a long way to go to really rebuild the trust in the community, and some even say build trust, because maybe in the Black community there has been not a lot of trust in our law enforcement. However, at the same time, we know that we need law enforcement, which is why, I supported a resolution to make sure we had the funding to hire the police that we need. And I took a lot of heat from that. But you know why I did it? Because people in North Minneapolis, people in wards 5 and 4 were calling me saying, our council member is not answering the charge. And we need help. They sued the city. And so I took it upon myself to stand up for Black people who were calling for this. And that, that was a tough vote. But, Al, I got in this thing to really lift up Black voices. And that's the work that I've been trying to do. And it's so interesting that I'm taking heat for that. But I'm willing to take the heat because we need that kind of leadership.
Let me pivot. We've got around 4 minutes left. I want you to talk about building wealth in the Black community in two arenas. One is as part of the restoration after the George Floyd uprising. How do we ensure that Black businesses and people of color businesses both emerge get resourced and grow and thrive in Ward 8 and in South Minneapolis, actually Broadway, in all parts of the city is question one. And then the question of home ownership. How do we deal with getting our people who are at a severe disadvantage because of policies and practice into home ownership? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, great question, Al. And as you may be aware, I created and have been hosting for the past 3 years Black Business Week to bring awareness and attention to Black business owners, also to help provide resources to Black entrepreneurs. It's really interesting that the fastest growing entrepreneur base is Black women in North Minneapolis and across the city and across the metropolitan region, for that matter. Across the country, Black women are stepping up and starting businesses. It's a fascinating phenomenon. One of the things that we are doing, we created what we called Commercial Property Development Fund to give small business owners support and the opportunity to purchase the buildings that they are renting. And that program has been a huge success. One of the business owners we've been able to help with that, Olu's Home, they were able to purchase a building in South Minneapolis on Hennepin Avenue, and other businesses throughout the city, and we're investing more money into that. On the home ownership front, that has been a pernicious challenge in the city of Minneapolis and throughout the country because of redlining, et cetera. But we have stepped up our home ownership support by working with community-based organizations like Northside Redevelopment Council, the Land Trust, and other community-based groups to make sure that they are helping to get the information out about home ownership opportunities. And Al, I am in the preschool room right now, and they are returning to.
Well, this is our time.
They're
Madam
returning here, but
Madam President, thank you so much, and good luck in your bid for re-election.
Thank you
All
for
right.
having me. I
Sure.
really appreciate the opportunity. It's so good to see you, Al, and
Likewise.
we're gonna win.
All right, all right. I'm
All
Al
right.
McFarlane. This is the Conversation with Al McFarlane. And thanks to Council President Andrea Jenkins, and also to Terry White for talking about why they each want your vote to be the City Council representative of Ward 8. Elections are November 7th, coming up real quick here. So make sure that you vote. Let me just double check that date. Tuesday, November 7th, elections in Minneapolis and St. Paul and some suburban communities as well. We want to close the program out by once again inviting you to show up and to learn about the program coming up this Saturday in North Minneapolis. It's the Black Men's Legacy Summit 2. And I have the honor and the fortune of being invited to be the moderator and the MC for the day. But I'm telling you, it's a phenomenal collection of great minds, great leaders, and an assembly of questions and answers, solutions to moving our people forward. The theme of this year's summit, Reclaiming Control of Our Future. And it builds on the first summit a year ago, where the question was raised, how do we get here? We have this litany of disparities, and everybody was talking the language of disparity, and almost as if we were embracing the disparity and not even focusing on the way out. Well, this program, Reclaiming our Control of Our Future, moves us away from being stuck in the trauma of how do we get here, and moves us towards solutions, how we reclaim our future and move ahead. David McGee is here. He's the principal at Build Wealth Minnesota and the organizer, the host of this event, the Black Men's Legacy Summit 2. David, good to see you, and thank you so much for what you're doing invite people and tell them why it's important that every Black man that has the time, make the time to show up this Saturday at this important meeting.
Yeah, this is critical. I thank you for having me, Al, and I'm looking forward to this event. I know you were there last year, and
It was
it was
great.
standing, excuse me, standing room only
Mhm.
throughout the event. A lot of nuggets. I could barely leave to use the restroom. It was just that intriguing. Every
Mhm.
single voice that was there, not that, but the resources as well. So 9,000 equities, as you've been having in your paper, and you've been covering for. We're getting ready to enter year 3 of the
Mhm.
initiative to get 9,000 Black families intentionally into home ownership here in the state of Minnesota to address closing the disparity gap. So 9,000 equities. We have 16 partners now that are working together to address this. And so we had such a great time last year. Black men are not that. We serve all kinds of families, helping them to get into home ownership. But the least of those that close on homes are Black men
Mhm.
for a host of reasons. We could probably do a whole show on that. And so we wanted to make sure that we were intentional about opening up opportunities for Black men to build a legacy for their family and reclaim a lot of the hurt and a lot of the things that have been um, pilfered from us over the years because of systems, slavery, redlining, you name it. Black
Mhm.
men are always at the lowest end. And so we made this event specifically to provide every tool and every piece of information and resources to go along with them to take away the excuse that a Black man would have not to build a legacy for their family. So in this room will be job opportunities, employment opportunities, business startup opportunities and expansion opportunities, franchise opportunities, opportunities to purchase apartment buildings with very little money down. I say very little money down. A lot of opportunities are going to be in this room for spirituality, for health. We put everything that we would need that we've been lacking in this room.
Mhm.
And as you can see the lineup, and you may want to put that,
Yeah.
this is the lineup of folks.
Mhm.
There is a wealth of wisdom and relationships that you will be able to start. It isn't always what you know, it's who you know. And this room is full of intellectual capital and access to opportunity in this room to have there just for you. You get to talk to them specifically, receive what they have, and get instruction to where to go to get everything you need. Credit, home ownership, whatever you're lacking, it's there. So you need
Walk,
to be here.
David,
You need to.
walk us through the program for the day. And I see everybody there. I know these are all great leaders in community, great servants in community. But for our listeners and viewers, kind of walk us through how you've arranged the categories and what's
Yeah,
going to
we did this.
involve.
Yeah, we did this intentionally as well. Mahmoud El Kati, Dr. Mahmoud El Kati, who was there last year and spoke. He was going to be our keynote again this year. Unfortunately, he's very sorry about it, but he had his family had planned to take him on a birthday celebration, which he deserves. But he did provide us with a taping
Mhm.
that he's going to speak to us just about us in a way that is just a couple of minutes where he's going to start the event and inspire us. We turn it over to you. We're thinking that you're one of the greatest moderators there are because you bring questions and you bring hard questions and you just keep things on the 100, as the young people say, truthful and honest. But after that, we have one of the executive senior vice presidents of U.S. Bank, who's getting ready. He's leading the charge to invest quite a few. I think it's over $100 million or a couple million, $100 million into North Minneapolis specifically for Black people.
Mhm.
And so he's going to be kind of our keynote speaker to talk about that, as well as talk about how do we get out of this? How do we get ourselves before? How did we get here? It was last year. Now it's like, okay, how do we use the ladder and the tools to get out of here economically?
Mhm.
So that's a really powerful tool that we needed. Then we're going to be moving into some of our great leaders, Senator and the President of the Senate of State of Minnesota, Senator Bobby Joe Champion, who has really been an awesome champion to so many in this last session. He is statewide has provided millions of dollars to make transformation in our communities. He's going to be speaking along with our Attorney General, Keith Ellison. They're going to tell us about their journey of how they got to where they're at, and then give us a real good insight on how we as Black men can navigate those systems in order to bring resources to our neighborhoods and to our families. And I'm Senator Champion is my hero. He's brought well over $5 million over the last 4 or 5 years to build wealth Minnesota. Then he just went to the Senate and got us another $5 million and plus another $500,000 a year for several years to help us do what we do here.
I think that qualifies as hero.
I think that's a hero. And he's going to bring that same, I mean, that's just not for me.
Yeah.
We all have access to that.
Right.
And it wasn't rocket science.
Yeah.
There is a strategy to do that. And with Keith Ellison, man, he's got global connection. I bet you could call the president if I asked him. And he has access to opportunity as well for us. And man, look what he's done for George Floyd's situation. Put a white cop in jail in Minnesota for killing one of us. He's got so many. Like I said, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Great opportunity. Then we're going to move it over to a spiritual place about really overcoming a lot of this trauma we've gone through. We got young 14-year-olds and young men that are killing each other, and there's some real social, spiritual, foundational things that we need help with. And so they're going to be there to talk about that. They're not there to do church. They're there to go deep, and they went deep last year. And so we got a different group of bishops and leaders from the spiritual community that are going to speak to us. And then we're moving from there. Let me hurry up and get through this. We
got a minute or so.
Okay, we got young Black men that have been challenged. So we have a panel on charting our future. So there's more younger approach to the young Black men. Then we've got some corporate responsibility from NARAB, that's the National Black Brokers Association, and someone from U.S. Bank, as U.S. Bank is trying to help us get back into it. We're going to do some more on, the power of equity. And then Dorothy Bridges is going to be our special guest, along with Warren McLean on business development. I already spoke about the health and wellness. Then Marcus Owens is going to talk about employment opportunities. Then last but not least, we're going to be talking about home ownership and financial education. And then we got the supreme powerhouse Reverend. The Reverend is going to do a call to action with Reverend McAfee, Jerry McAfee. So we've got a really good lineup. And not only that, there's about 18 different tables around the event that have the resources to these guys. What comes out of their mouth, you'll be able to actually go get the resources to get what they have to offer.
We're out of time right now, but we're going to have somebody tomorrow and Friday back on the program, because that's how important this is. To make sure that we use every day this week promoting and inviting people to show up and show out at the Black Men's Legacy Summit happening this Saturday, October 28th, 2023. And it's going to be at 1256 Penn Avenue on the 5th floor. That we call it the Thor Building, but it probably has a formal name that we can go into later. Out of time. David McGee, thank you, brother. We'll see you. Take care.
Thank you.
I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time.